Gee,
Okay.
I'm not used to being filmed.
Don't even think about the camera.
Okay.
So Tom,
So today we're blessed with having the actual chairman of the History and Artifacts Committee, but we're going to talk with him today about his personal experiences. He's done a lot for the club and certainly probably has forgotten more than most people will know about its history. We want to talk a little bit about that today, but to begin with, as we have with all of our conversations, why don't you give us a little bit of background, Will, when you joined the club, and just what attracted you to it, and get a little bit of background information on that.
Well, I joined the club in 1979. Before that, I had been living in San Francisco, and I used to come over here quite often on Sundays to go to a bar up here on Main Street called 39 Main. And it was
I remember that one.
quite active on
Yes.
Sundays. You know, everybody'd come from all over the Bay Area, and they had music, and it was a sing-along thing. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, I used to come often to that. And I'd look out the window and I'd saw this big white building. You know, I asked, what's that? Oh, that's the Corinthian Yacht Club. Oh, okay. So anyway, I had a friend who was a sailor, and he sailed out of the East Bay, but he took off and sailed around the world. And came, to the South Seas. He was going to sail around the world, but he didn't quite make it. He made it as far as the South Seas and came back. Well, I was out on his boat a couple times, and that kind of renewed my quest for my, thirst for sailing, because I had done some as a Sea Scout in Stockton when I was in high school. Okay, so I semi-learned to sail there. Well, I looked around and what to do, and went to a boat show and ended up joining a sailing club in the East Bay. This is one of those where they have the boats, and you can...
Or like a teaching.
Yeah, well, there was a
instruction.
teaching thing, plus you could sign up for their boats and take it out and sail it, a group of the members of this club. Well, this club occasionally had social cruises on certain events where one of the instructors or big wheels in the club would be conducting the sail, and a bunch of members would all get on the boat and we'd all sail around for whatever it was. Well, came along opening day, 1979, all right? We had a social cruise to come over and get the boat blessed, right? Okay, so anyway, we all got on this boat and sailed over here, sailed by the blessing boat and got the boat blessed, and we were just about ready to turn around and go back, and the instructor said, hey, why don't we stop at my yacht club and have a drink? Oh, everybody was all for that. Turned out my yacht club was the Corinthian. That was a guy named Steve Newland. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we had a drink here, and then we got back on the boat, and we were sailing back to Alameda or wherever, I think it was Oakland the boat was out of. It was in the estuary somewhere. And Steve says, hey, any of you would like to join the club? I can arrange that. I think I was the only one, but I was all for that. So anyway, that's how it happened. Opening day, 1979.
Do you recall at that time what it cost to join the club?
Yeah, I think it was $650.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
think
sense.
that's what it was. And I can recall that comparing that with some people were talking about, the club down the street, and that was what, 1,500 or some 1,200, or it was about double, whatever. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, that's how I joined the club, and then okay, Steve was going to be one of my sponsors. But then I remembered I had a friend that I met in a Cal alumni thing who was a member here. And so I called him. And he ended up being my number one sponsor because his wife was a daughter of one of our old Commodores, Sid Chapin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. And so anyway, and then Steve introduced me to his friend who was going to be my other sponsor, and that was George Horsfall.
Okay. Okay. Well, good name.
So with Steve
name.
Newland and George Horsfall, guess what committee I ended up on right away? Race committee.
Race committee.
Because George was in those days, our perennial race chairman. And Steve was, well, he was involved in the race committee also. So anyway, that's how I got into this.
So tell me, back then, did you go through, like today, go through the interviewing process?
Oh, yes.
And the posting? So that
Oh,
was
yes.
in full, what can you say, effect, just like it is
I
today.
did go through the interview process, and I remember after doing that, they had a welcoming process with, you meet the board or something like that. And Bill Patry was the Commodore to welcome me into the club.
Okay. So did you actually go to the board meetings? Because I know that there was a time when...
I don't remember, it was a meeting, and I
It was a
remember
meeting.
Patry being there and kind of conducting the things, and I don't remember if it was a board meeting or a special meeting for
Okay.
new members.
Okay,
I don't remember
Yeah.
which it was.
okay.
That was a few years ago.
Yes?
Roughly, how big was the club then in terms of membership? Was it smaller than it is today?
It's smaller than it was today.
Mhm.
And I can remember after I joined the club, I ended up on race committee or a membership committee, and we were talking about that and said, if we just had 500 members, we'd be in great shape. Well, we've gotten 500 members long ago, and we're still having the same arguments, same problems.
When you joined, did you ever think that you would own a boat one day, or was joining the club sort of a catalyst to
Well,
move in
it
that
seems
direction?
that Bill Sisk, my number one sponsor, also had a boat for sale. It was a Cal 20. So I ended up buying his boat. And I was living over at Shelter Bay at the time, over in Mill Valley.
Yeah.
And they have docks there. So I had the boat in there for a while. But that was a big problem because you have to go out at high tide.
Yeah.
But otherwise you get stuck. And I did that once or twice, got stuck out there. And anyway, so and I ended up moving the boat here, got a trailer, and put it here on the deck.
On the deck.
Yeah.
So how long
later.
did you have it? How long did you have the Cal 20?
Oh, I had it for, let's see, I sold it to Jack Barr and Kathleen.
Sure.
They were going to take it up to Clear Lake because they were living in Ukiah at the time. But they couldn't find a place in Clear Lake to put it in, or to hoist it off the, to get it into the water. What year was that? Well, that was probably somewhere in the 80s.
Okay.
Because about that time, Tim Jones, and he had a small boat too, and we decided to do a little better. So he and I went together on a Cal 29.
Yeah, I remember. I
Yeah.
remember that, I remember that. So your Cal 20 left the club, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it ended up over San Francisco
okay. But it's
because
not one of the ones that are down on the deck
no,
right
it's
now.
gone.
Okay.
Because they were going to take, as I say, take it up to Clear Lake,
Yeah.
but they couldn't make it work up there. Nothing heavy enough to lift it out, hoists
Sure,
and
sure.
so forth. Even though Cal 20 is not a big boat, but Clear Lake's small.
Sure.
And so they sold it to someone, but I remembered the sale number, and I saw it sailing over there a couple of years later. So
Okay.
I think that's where it ended up.
So when did you buy your current boat?
Bought my current boat in 2000, I think it was 2000. Just as I moved back from Lake Tahoe. I was up at Tahoe at least part-time during the 90s, and up at Incline Village. And just about that time I heard that a boat was for sale, and so I got on that and ended up buying it.
When you were up at Tahoe, did you use the reciprocity with the Tahoe Yacht Club?
I became a member of the
You
Tahoe.
became a member. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right, because they have parties up there, and
Sure.
they're good to go to and so forth. Yeah. No, I became a member and was a member for several years.
When did you start to get an interest in all the history here? Because we're surrounded by it, but was this something of an avocation of yours? I know you're interested.
Well, I've always been interested in history, and I've always liked to research and so forth. And one time I was standing out on the deck right by the flagpole. I can remember that. And first I'd been talking to, what was his name? Commodore. Suddenly the name escapes me. Vince.
Oh,
Yeah, Vincent.
yeah,
Warren Vincent. Okay.
Yeah.
And this was early 1980s, and we were all looking forward to the centennial in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, they were talking about how we needed somebody. They wanted to do this book. We needed somebody to research. And so I mentioned to Warren, I said, shoot, I'd love to do that, because I'd done some research before and so forth. And Warren turned around and said to, I think it was to
Pig Slaughter?
Slotto.
Yeah.
I had done some research, and oh wow, suddenly I was
You
I
were
had
the
a
man,
job.
you were the
job.
man.
Yeah. So that's how I got involved with the history of the club.
And were you working with John Culver on this as well? Because I know he had an
A
interest.
little bit, but John didn't really do much on that. It was mostly working with Slotto. John was in charge of it. He was the whole thing.
Right.
He was kind of overseeing it.
Right.
But I was mostly working with Slotto. And Slotto hired a woman, not a member of the club, but just an author woman, to write the book. And so I was feeding information to her. And
Was that you mainly feeding the info, or were you a big group that were actually doing research?
kind of both. I was doing a lot of it, but I ran out of time, actually, and didn't do much research past the clubhouse, 1912.
Oh,
Okay, so Slotto, whatever's past there, Slotto did himself. He found, information and put in there. I did a little past there, but most of it was the early stuff.
Sure.
And yeah, we, to find the information, we put together teams of people who we concentrated on the Sausalito News newspaper rather than the San Francisco newspapers, even though they have a lot. The Sausalito News was a weekly, so you didn't have to turn through quite so many pages to find what you wanted.
yeah.
The San Francisco dailies, my gosh, you'd be sitting there forever and get only 2 weeks or something. But with the Sausalito News, we could assign, 1908 or 1902 you take the first half of it, and somebody else would take the second half of it, and we did pretty well doing that.
So basically you got all the info, you got that, all the history, you got that from, not that it was available here, you had to go
Yes,
elsewhere.
oh yeah, we had to go
To-
elsewhere.
to
We
find-
did
to
get
find it.
We did get a lot of stuff from the San Francisco newspapers.
Okay.
But we got a lot from the Sausalito News,
Okay.
because it's the closest newspaper, to here, so, to the club.
So is some of that still on our premises, or was it all
Well, lots of it's in the book.
in the book? Yeah, I know,
It's
but,
in the book. The raw stuff, I've got stacks of stuff that needs going through at home. And I did put a bunch of stuff in locker 14, the one right next to
next
the
to
old bathroom downstairs. What happened to that, I have no
Okay.
idea. It may be in the archives room, and it may not be. Who knows?
What about the artifacts, the photos, the photographs, the books? Were those fairly easy to find, or did the committee were you on like a scavenger hunt trying to?
We were pretty much on a scavenger hunt. There were things here. There were photographs and so forth here. A lot of the photographs came out of newspapers. Although, newspaper photographs are pretty hard to copy. We were able to find, the basic photographs that we wanted to print in the book.
Right. Because we're blessed with a lot of that around here now,
Yeah, we
and I
are.
know the committee is sort of started doing that again and
Yes.
getting even more information.
Yeah, we're going to have to organize all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of stuff in that archives room that we don't even know about.
What about the social life here? I know, most places the holy grail is the liquor license, the bar. What about in terms of people using the club socially? And also we had a number of bartenders, I understand, that were sort of fixtures here as well. And
Well, we had Vince.
Yeah.
Vince, Italian last name, which
Yeah.
I don't remember. He lives up, I think Novato somewhere.
I believe so.
He may be still there. But he was one of our more notable bartenders. Then there was another notable bartender was Michael. Michael, what was his last name? Collins. Michael Collins. Okay. He was here for a long time, and then he left to go to work in one of the hotels in San Francisco. Vince retired, but that's why he left.
Right.
but there was also, and I saw, because we have pictures of, remember the dinghy derbies, as far as social, we had a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
activities on the water.
yeah, we did. That is correct.
And we do have a tape where you and Tim Jones, where you were out in the little El Toros and
Well, that
everything.
probably was true.
Well, it is true.
I remember one time there was this dinghy derby race. I was just a spectator, but I think this was kind of funny that Bill Patrick, of course, he was a big sailor. He was, he was the winner usually. All right. Well, he was involved in this little dinghy derby and so forth. And Matasic, there was Matasic, who was a Commodore, Marin Matasic, and then he had a son who was here. I can't remember his first name, but he dove, before the race, he dove down and hung a bunch of stuff heavy stuff on the keel of Bill Patrick's boat. so that it wouldn't go.
Oh.
And so Patrick ended up finishing way back.
Wait, had no idea.
Yeah, he didn't know that.
When he found out, he probably wasn't very happy though.
That's right.
But that was an annual event actually,
Yeah.
and we have a really nice tape of it. I think you actually it's there on
Yeah.
our YouTube, and with some funny scenes. And
Yeah.
there must have been about 20 boats, and
Oh
they
yeah,
covered the
there was a
whole-
lot of them. That was a big
That
day.
was as far as I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was the Commodore's picnic, Labor Day event. It was a
Yeah,
Sort of
something
told
like
us,
that.
yeah.
I don't remember the details, but I do remember that it happened.
it definitely happened.
Yes.
And so, Will, what do you see of sort of major changes in the club from when you joined until today?
Well, one of the big changes since I joined is we have women in the club now. When I joined, we did not. I take that back. I joined in '79, and I think it was '74, the first woman joined the club, and a year or two after that, the second one, who I can recall, was Jane Ann Ray, whose father. She was all upset that she wasn't the first woman, because her father, Britton Ray, had been an old-time member here. The third woman was, what was her name? Judy Talbot.
Oh, Judy Talbot,
Yeah,
yes.
who ended up marrying Dr. Dick Brenner.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
yep, yep.
One time, we were all in the bar, and this was with George Horsfall, and a bunch of us were at one end of the bar, and the bar used to, now toward the door of the club, it just goes straight to the wall. Well, it used to curve, and there were seats, around the curve. So they could look down to the end of the bar and so forth. Anyway, Judy was kind of she's a little on the dingy side, but then so was Dick.
Erase.
So was Dick Brenner.
Erase.
Yeah, so was Dick Brenner, as we all know. Yeah. Anyway, Judy was sitting at one end of the bar, and so we just as a joke said, "Hey, Dick, why don't you go down and meet that girl down at the end?" He did, and they got married.
Well, it's
They fit each other.
They fit. Will, we've had an opportunity to talk over the years, and I think we would be missing something if I didn't ask you about, you have some factoids on this place, little things that people have never heard of, never known, unless they maybe have gone out on a tour with you walking through the club. But what are some of the odder things here? Like, for instance, I've heard people mention that there was a ghost here. And
there's ghost stories. That's correct.
Yeah.
A lot of people, mainly hired help, tell us about bartenders who have to close the club when everybody's gone. They go upstairs, and there's stories they tell about. They turn off the lights, and the lights come back on again. Things like that. Then, those went on and on. And one of the ones that I remember the most, I wasn't there, but I was there and heard about it the next day, is that this was the bartender that was Michael Collins. Okay. He, all right, let's see, how did this, well, we know oh shoot, I'm having trouble thinking of names, but, long time, years and years ago, long time port captain. Shoot, now suddenly I'm trying to think of his name. Keefe, John Keefe. Okay. Well, he, of course, died and so forth. And when he retired, the club gave him a clock. All right? Mantle type clock. Well, Bob Keefe, one of his sons or grandsons, I'm not sure whether it's a son or grandson, remembers that clock and that it was always striking and so forth. So they gave it back to the club. It's sitting on our mantle now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that clock had sat there, and it didn't work. It was not till a few years later that I think John finally took it. John, our manager now, took it and got it fixed so it actually runs. Okay. Well, in those days it wasn't running, and one time I think it was Bob Keith and his brother. They're from St. Francis. Were at the bar, and they looked up and saw, oh, hey, there's our grandfather's clock. It's not running. If you folks aren't going to keep it better, we're going to take it. Oh, all right. So anyway, I guess they had another drink and left and didn't take the clock. So Michael Collins, the bartender, he's cleaning up. Just after they left, the clock started striking. And it hadn't run in years.
Years, out of the blue.
So anyway, and I guess Collins, he freaked out.
Yeah, and I've heard about like phone lines blinking and
Yes.
all of a sudden.
Yeah, right. I've heard those.
Phone
Yeah.
line that's blinking and there's nobody here, and all of a
Right.
sudden it's.
Another little known fact is that we're abutting an island that
That's
was
correct.
not originally Corinthian Island.
No, that's correct.
Most
It's
people don't know that.
Originally Valentine's Island, and Thomas B. Valentine. Yeah, he owned the island, and the club got a lease from him for the tip of the island, and they blasted out and dug out a ledge to put the first clubhouse on. We're still on that ledge. But anyway, they had a lease. I think the first one was something like 12 years, something like that. But then Valentine, when that lease was up, he shortened it down, so they were just doing year by year leases. And the club couldn't plan anything, of course,
No.
with that, because Valentine had these plans to subdivide the island, and he was going to build a grand hotel on the ledge that our guys had blasted out. And there were newspaper articles, I'll have to find one, that they're around, we've got them somewhere, that Corinthian Yacht Club's going to have to move because this hotel's coming. Well, so our guys started looking around to find, where are we going to go? Looking for another location for a yacht club, a clubhouse. And as they were looking and looking, and a year or so later, Valentine died. So then his heirs, I think they actually, I'll have to look this up, refresh my memory, but I think they sold it to developers, the land on the island. But in any case, they dropped the plans for the Grand Hotel, and then our people were able to negotiate a sale and actually purchase the property. So that enabled them then to start planning to build a new clubhouse, which they did in 1912. So during the early 90s, the first decade of the 90s, it was kind of a turmoil to figure out what are we going to do. So anyway, they ended up buying the property, and I guess the developers went ahead and subdivided the island and so forth. And then they changed the name from Valentine's Island to Corinthian Island because the club was here. Some people think that Corinthian got their name from the island. Not so.
The way around.
It's the other way around.
Do you remember, number one, how much they purchased the land for? And how big was the Corinthian Yacht Club at that time?
Well, I don't remember. I'd have to do some research to find that. But I do remember that the news articles in certain magazines and so forth. There was this guy that wrote articles about the clubs on the bay during the late 90s, and there were 3 yacht clubs at first.
You're talking late 1890s.
Late 18, yeah, did I say 19? I mean,
No, you said 80s. I just
okay, 1890s, yes. The club was only, what?
6 years old.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, by the year 1900, he wrote about that he gave the numbers of the yacht clubs that were here. By then, the Pacific Yacht Club had died, so it was only really, well, there were some coming up in the East Bay in the 1890s, but of the ones over here, before Pacific died, he gave the numbers, and the Corinthian was the largest. Had more members than San Francisco and the Pacific, who were both over in Sausalito at the time.
So what was the Pacific was, what was the Pacific, or what?
Well, it had, San Francisco Yacht Club, it had a split.
Oh, okay.
And they split away from the San Francisco Yacht Club.
Okay.
The San Francisco Yacht Club was originally in San Francisco on a small plot of land owned by the Southern Pacific, down south of the 3rd Street Bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
By the ballpark.
Yeah, well, across the bridge from the ballpark. Well, apparently the Southern Pacific kicked them out. And they wanted to do something else with the property or whatever. So they decided to move to Sausalito. Well, there was a big argument in the club as to where in Sausalito. Okay, San Francisco, the one group wanted to be on Bridgeway, where they ultimately built their clubhouse. The Pacific wanted to be back, how can I explain it? Where the road comes down the hill, winds around, and then ends up in what they called Old Sausalito. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, down like Spencer, down off of that, or closer toward
Closer to the south.
Cavallo Point, out in that direction.
Well, I'm not sure.
Well, Cavallo Point is where the fort was.
Okay. The highway, say you get off the highway, Golden Gate Bridge.
Right,
You come
right,
around,
yeah.
you go past, come
Right.
out, all that stuff. And you turn to the west and dropping down, and then you're on, I don't know what the street is.
I think it's called Bridgeway. Is that Bridgeway?
No, and that's not Bridgeway. Bridgeway's around, you gotta go around the point a little bit.
Is this where the
Where
Travis?
Sally Stanford's place
Oh, okay.
used to be.
Valhalla.
Valhalla. Yeah,
Yeah,
right there.
was there, near there. Well, they were up against the hills.
Oh.
That's where they built a clubhouse. So that was where the Pacific Yacht Club was. And my suspicion is, I don't know, but I think they thought that being up in that kind of cove would give them more shelter than being right out on Bridgeway.
Bridgeway. Yeah.
Well, it ended up the Pacific Yacht Club died in late 1890s, or 1890s, yes.
Right.
Okay, and they ended up going back together. The two clubs did.
So, which is San Francisco Yacht Club?
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
which was in the building where Ondine Restaurant
Yeah.
is now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that was their clubhouse.
Oh,
That
okay.
was the second one. The first one burned down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was their second clubhouse.
And then what was the connection with the Corinthian? Wasn't that sort of spawned out of that or not?
Sort of. The Corinthian was, there was a bunch of guys in there, probably both clubs. And some of them were probably not affiliated with either club, but they were small boat sailors. Small boat meaning under 40 feet, because these two yacht clubs had wealthy people who had, big 80-foot schooners, and they'd sail them with hired crews and that kind of thing. Well, this bunch of small boat guys, well, okay, there were also something on the bay called the Mosquito Fleet at that time. And these were guys that were in the Mosquito Fleet. Probably most of them belonged to the San Francisco Yacht Club, but that's a guess. We have no records of that.
And this was essentially a small boat fleet?
Yes, fleet of people that wanted to work on and sail their own boats, not without hired crews and so forth. Plus, they were frustrated that the club would have a cruise. Well, the big boats, big long boats, of course, they're faster, waterline length more, they go faster. They'd all sail to a certain point, and by the time the small boats would get there, the big boats had already turned around, were halfway back. And so this was, frustrating to them. So they decided to form their own yacht club. So they went over to, a crew got together, led by a guy named Tracy, T.F. Tracy,
Yeah.
Nicknamed Joe. Everybody called him Joe. Okay, so they got together one time in San Francisco at a place called Harry's. Harry's was a German beer hall is what it was. The real name of it was Aryan Hall, but everybody called it Harry's.
And where was this in the city?
It was located at the corner, let's see, the northeast corner of Kearny and Sutter Streets.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was a very popular place in those days. Musicians would finish their gigs and they'd go there at night and, things like that. And, well, Harry's had it was owned by a guy named Henry Grimm. He was a German guy. And, but his nickname was Harry. And so everybody called it Harry's. And it had some meeting halls in the basement. I don't know how many, but our guys met in what was called Parlor C.
That was your room.
That was where they met. Okay, there's stuff downstairs that tells us that.
About Parlor C.
Yeah, that we met in Parlor C. There's also stuff that says they met under the sidewalk. The meeting took place. This is kind of tongue-in-cheek. Under the sidewalk of Kearny Street. So we can guess that Parlor C was the northernmost or westernmost meeting hall downstairs. So anyway, that they met there and decided to form a yacht club.
So what I think is interesting when you read our book, so when this yacht club was formed, and here you said they met at Harry's bar.
Yep.
And yet there was to be no alcohol was to be served at the Corinthian Yacht Club.
Well, that was after we had built a clubhouse, which happened in 1887. They built this as I say, they blasted out this ledge and built this clubhouse. And in the bylaws, you're right, and the bylaws said no liquor will ever be served. They didn't want it to be a lounging place.
Okay.
No liquor will ever be served in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Now, that clause was
Oh,
in there
yes.
until for years and years, and I've not been able to find out just when it was taken out. I think it was after the not the Depression,
The
after
Prohibition.
the Prohibition. But anyway, plenty of drinking went on, but they go under the clubhouse.
It was a
They wouldn't be
speakeasy.
in.
Effectively
Yeah.
like a speakeasy.
Right.
Yeah.
I just thought when you read that,
No,
it's
that is
like,
correct.
This is unbelievable.
And that's one of the things I think we should research. When did that?
When
did-
was the
that
first drink
removed?
served? Yeah, when was it? Yeah, yeah. So, well, speaking about, you were talking about music and singing and bands and so forth and so forth. I know that you were part of the men's chorus.
Oh yeah, we had a
here
men's
in,
chorus for a while.
Now, I remember all about the men's chorus, but I can't remember when did it actually start and when did it sort of
Oh
dissolve?
shoot,
Just approximately.
probably about early 2000s, 2006 or 7 or something like that. That's just a guess because I don't really remember.
That's when it would have ended?
It was first formed.
Oh, first formed.
Yes.
And how many were you?
Oh, there were quite a few. There are pictures around of all of us standing there.
And you would be performing
Yeah.
at kind of what functions?
Oh shoot, we sang at opening day, we sang at, oh crap, every time the club would have some event, we'd be there. It was led by Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie Taylor.
Jackie Taylor,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that
And-
was that was lively. That
Yeah, it sure was.
a-
We made a lot of noise. Actually, we really wanted to. This is one of the reasons it ended, is we all kind of got bored with the way it was going. We wanted to sing parts, get harmony, and so actually be a men's chorus. But Jackie didn't know how to do that, how to
Okay.
organize that. So that's why it just kind of dwindled away.
Were you part of any of the shows that we had?
Oh
Remember
yes,
Jackie
there were
and-
3 shows. That was not Jackie. That was Shields.
Yeah,
What was her first name? Jean Shields.
Jean Shields, yeah.
Yes, she organized those shows. She had been in the show business in Chicago, I guess, or somewhere. And so she was able to organize shows. There were 3 of them, 87, 88, and 89, I believe. I was only in one of them. That was 88. I think I was in that one.
That's gonna come there will be some older movies from these shows.
I've got
too,
a
then.
mov-
We
I've
may
got
ask
a-
you to.
Movie, what do you call it?
8 tracks, what were they, cassettes?
8mm.
Yeah, it's,
I can convert that.
Yeah.
okay.
Film.
No, I've got, it's of the one I was in, somewhere, if I can find it.
No
Yeah.
problem. I'll put it on Netflix and maybe you'll get a royalty.
Yeah, maybe so.
So
I
Will,
don't-
you,
I have the programs for the other
you
2,
do?
but that's part of the stuff I have at home.
Okay.
Right.
But I
okay.
don't have a program for the one I was in, but I do have this tape of, videotape of it, of the show.
Happy to convert.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of, it's part of our history because it was big
Oh, sure it
productions
was.
actually.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's gonna ever happen again, but that was a lot of fun and a lot of us.
it was. Yeah, we had a
It'll
lot of
inspire
fun.
people if they see it.
Maybe.
We'll see.
so Will, you've always been quite active here, and this is clearly your club. along the way, did you ever have an appetite to get involved in, for lack of a better term, the more political side? The,
Oh
going
yeah,
up the flag.
we were. As you probably will recall, we had a big political blowout in 1989.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that was, yeah, I was kind of involved with that, sort of. And that, you know, after that, it was not a real pleasant thing. It was a, you know, opposition slate thing
Yeah.
and so forth. And there was some bitterness afterwards.
Did we
And
lose any members over that?
don't know if we actually lost members, but a lot of people stopped coming to the bar for quite a while afterward. I can remember that. In the 80s, Friday nights the bar was full, and after that, not so much.
It became quite political.
It did,
Yeah,
yes, it
became
was.
quite
It was
political.
not, yeah,
It was
unfortunate.
had to be uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Yes,
You know? It's
it
not
was.
something that it's not the spirit that this club normally has.
That is correct,
So,
yeah.
any aspirations at any time to go up the flag and be a Commodore or?
Me? No, I never really did. Well, I don't. I think I want to say anything about that. that would get into the politics of it.
Yeah.
Right.
We should
No,
nominate
I-
this guy.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't really ever have a desire to do that.
Well,
always wanted to help, but as Warren Vincent said about me, he's one of the background guys. You know, I just work in the background and.
Well, certainly in all the conversations that we've had, the good times far outweigh the more difficult times that we went through, and we didn't have
absolutely.
we didn't have a lot of them. In fact, when we were having difficulties, not so much politically but financially, there's some wonderful stories of how people really rose, because this club could have closed numerous times, and it didn't.
You know, that's one of the things that in our research, I've never been able to find out much about the 1930s. And I'm wondering, the club made it through the Depression, but I'm wondering what, I'm sure there was stress and there, problems, financial problems and member problems, and but it's hard to find any information about the 1930s.
What about during the war years?
That's another one that's hard to find. The club was here, but yachting was very restricted on the bay. You just couldn't, unless you were, I guess, kind of like licensed, you couldn't go out there. They didn't want you out there in the way in case a Japanese would show up or something or whatever.
Sure.
And we didn't know that at the time.
No, no, we didn't.
I think it's interesting thinking about our club, and I think we all feel that there's just so much history here, because when you think about when this club was established, all the things that happened afterwards, I mean, the earthquake, Golden Gate Bridge was built, the World War.
That's true.
And I mean, we could go on and on and on. And here was this little clubhouse sitting. I was looking through some pictures in history books over at the Bay Model, and one of them was Marine Headlands, history of Marine Headlands. I mean, they go way, way back, and you just saw some of the arcs, here. And then there's this tiny little clubhouse sitting here, the little red clubhouse.
Yeah, it was
And
painted
you just
bright
go-
red.
And
So-
it was amazing, because there was nothing else around. And
That's
here's
true.
this little
Wow.
clubhouse.
Yeah.
So I think this is what inspires all of us to,
Absolutely.
to get all the information about what we have here, because we have been here so long.
So long.
Yeah, we have.
So long.
That's right.
In terms of the future. We're getting more and more young members. Are there any thoughts that you'd like to impart to them? Because obviously, we don't have to repeat history. Each generation that comes in creates their own history. The most important thing is to sustain the club.
That is correct.
And be aware of the legacy that got us to where we are today.
Yeah, that's one of the things the History Committee wants to do, as you, both of you know, or all of you know,
All of us,
that we want to establish something so that we can show the history to our new members. So far, we haven't been successful at finding a good way to do that. Yeah, but you're right. We're getting new members, which we have to do. Otherwise, us old people are going to be gone.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have to carry on.
Right. And this club would have gone through the same thing as there were generational changes and new generations came in and wanted to do something maybe a little differently.
It's been doing that forever.
Yeah, and oftentimes when you change certain things that you do, they're actually improvements. So
that's correct.
As we know, we're getting more younger members again, which is really important.
That's correct.
But I do think there is a difference, though, when we look back through the years, talking about members. It was sort of a given. No, it wasn't a given, but it just happened. The members individuals who became members, they were all sailors. They had a boat. I mean, that's why you joined the sail club.
But
now it's more. It's a fantastic location.
It's a social club. Yeah.
It's a more social. Yeah.
And
I don't know if that tide will change. I have no idea.
Well, one thing that hasn't changed, and I only bring it up because it was something that you have enjoyed doing. Any special memories that you can relate from Cooks and Waiters?
Oh, cooks and waiters.
Maybe I should go out. Maybe I should leave the room.
No, you don't have to. Everybody thinks cooks and waiters is this awful thing. Well, we just have a good time. That's all we do. It's not that awful.
Okay,
It's
all
a
right.
great time.
Yeah, it's just a good
I win at
time.
poker.
Right. We do, maybe we do things like play poker that the women, would not enjoy that much. So we just have a chance to be a bunch of guys to do the things a bunch of guys like.
And you've been the bartender for a lot of years.
I was a bartender for 20-something years, and finally had to retire. Decided to retire.
Yeah, with that cheap rock gut liquor.
Get on the other side of the bar.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I was used to be in the old days when I was first a member of Cooks and Waiters. They would put you to work, doing something like folding napkins or something. Mm-hmm. It used to be a 2-day event.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, it kind of started on Friday night, but Saturday was getting ready for the big dinner we had have on Sunday, and that was a dinner for invite, mayor of the town, the fire chief.
That was on Sunday, not Saturday night.
That was on Sunday.
Oh.
And Saturday was the day to prepare for that.
Uh-huh.
That's the way it worked. And so I got tired of folding napkins and doing stuff like that. And the bartender at the time was a guy named Brooke Halsey.
Yes.
Okay. So I came in one time and he was behind the bar and I said, "Hey, do you need any help?" Yeah. Okay, so I was his assistant until he retired because he had a bad leg and couldn't walk that well or something. And so anyway, I became the bartender. And so this happened just a couple of years ago. I decided it's time for me to retire, so I turned it over to Brooke Halsey, who was his son.
Mr. Junior.
Yeah, Brooke Halsey Jr.
Yeah.
So,
And that's the same Brooke Halsey who has an interest, or we would like to
Yes,
have on this committee
right, because he's a board member of the
Landmark guy.
at the
Landmark Society,
Right.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, so he did it last year, you know, I sat on the other side of the bar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, his strengths are stronger than yours.
All right,
Well,
So I guess just in closing, since you are the chairman of the committee, what you might do is give us your vision. If everything adds up and you know we have get some of the things that we're looking for and find a space and all of that.
finding a space, that
Yeah.
is the big, if nothing else happens until I leave this place, we just find a space, that'll be, I'll consider that as, a goal achieved.
Right. Great.
Then, of course, there's two things here. Find a space, then we've got to sort out what we have down in the archives room and what some people have at home
yeah,
that they're afraid to bring here now.
yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
a problem.
I think we are sort of at a crossroad.
Yes.
It either has to happen now or it will probably
Right.
never happen.
That could well be.
Yeah.
It will happen now.
Yes.
It will.
Should
We're
happen.
gonna make
Okay.
it happen.
Mike, you're younger. You can carry on after I'm gone.
I know, just, you have to choose your battles and allocate your energy.
That's
all.
correct.
So
That you
just
sure
need to
do.
reposition
Yeah.
the crosshairs.
Well,
right.
I really want to thank you, Will, for taking the time today. Is there anything else that you can think of before we?
Well, gee, my mind is, kind of a big blot now after talking so much.
Yeah,
I probably
yeah.
ought to shut
But
up.
I think what we can always do is, I think that happens once. If there's all of a sudden something oh my goodness,
Yeah.
we should have talked
That
about
could
that.
happen, huh?
Will come back,
Yeah.
and that has happened, and I think we can all, when all of this is getting looked at and cut and whatever all we want to
Yeah,
do,
and-
we can add and subtract and
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
well,
next week you'll get from Mike not only what we've filmed today, and again understand that we're going to edit all of this so that it all comes together. But
all the hems and haws are
you're
taking them out.
you're
Yeah.
going to see all the other interviews that we did as well.
Good, wonderful.
And that may prompt you to
That could.
come up with some other
Yeah.
That's right.
other thoughts.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
And yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
kind of
Yeah.
thing.
but anyway, this was very good today. We've got some nice information, and the history is, as I said, you bringing some of these other stories that are not well known. I think people are going to enjoy. So thank you.
Okay,
All
you
right.
are
You're
certainly
welcome.
welcome, and thank you for
Well, thank you.
asking me to.
We're all here because of your diligence.
Okay.